of strategy that Juve have had over the past couple of seasons, past 3 seasons, because to be honest, for them, getting to the final of the Champions League and winning it this time was the holy grail. And I know it's probably unfair to say such a thing, but they decided to commit an awful lot of resources to the recruitment and the salary of one Cristiano Ronaldo. And I'm not absolutely sure it was the right choice to make at that time. And you wonder if they're not paying a bit for the decision, because obviously it had a ripple effect on the rest of the recruitment and as well as on the balance of the team, and on relying on somebody who is still a magnificent match winner on his day, but who is also not somebody perhaps who participates in the team effort as he used to. And he never used to do very much of that, but he does even less of it now. So I think quite a few people saw it coming, but perhaps not in that particular way. I must say that it was a little bit crazy last night.
It was. To matters at hand, PSG are 4-1 up on Barcelona at the Parc des Princes, so you would presume they'll safely navigate this one. That being said, there are interesting aspects to what we're about to watch. The first leg was dominated by Mbappe terrorising Barcelona and Erst Haaland responding 24 hours later. Here we are for the second leg, and Haaland has hit 20 Champions League goals in 14 matches, in doing so destroying Harry Kane's record by 10 games. So it's over to you, Kylian.
Well, the form is in at the moment. I don't know if you saw what he did at the weekend in the Coupe de France and the French Cup. Obviously, not quite the same level of competition, not quite the same kind of level of opposition. But it was rather spectacular. He's been unleashed, basically. And his first goal in particular was a thing of absolute beauty. I think Verratti managed to intercept the ball near the halfway line. And Mbappe just ran to the goal. And after, fading this way, fading that way, setting a couple of false clues to the defender, suddenly lined up this absolutely amazing left-footed shot, which ended up in the corner of the net, and it was absolutely unstoppable. And he's been like this. I mean, basically, that is the biggest news for PSG, is that Kylian Mbappe is back to this kind of level, he's really showing at the moment why, people, you talk about Haaland, I talk about Mbappe. Some people will talk about Phil Foden, I'm sure, not too long. But he is really very, very special. He's in great form. And for Pochettino, I mean, he's got a fairly full squad to choose from, with the exception of Neymar, who some people thought might be able to do it to make it to the bench, but that's apparently not the case. He's got a problem with the adductors, and he's not in a fit state to play. But what they've got on the pitch tonight should be enough, to be honest. I mean, that's perhaps the only thing that makes me wonder about it, is that should it happen, it would probably be even worse than what happened in March 2017, when they gave away 3 goals in 7 minutes from the 88th minute onwards and lost the famous remontada and were kicked out of the Champions League. I really can't see this happening tonight. I mean, honestly, they're a different team. They look more solid. And also, there are only a few players today in that PSG lineup who will remember what happened on that night and will bear the scars of this terrible disappointment. So, honestly, I think they should be able to make that. And I would say quite easily. Yes. Famous last words, eh?
Well, it's a very different PSG, as you've said. It's also a radically
very
different Barcelona. Yes,
yeah, exactly.
Dramatically. So I was reading a few pieces on Pochettino and how he's settling in. So I hadn't realised he contracted COVID early on. I vaguely remembered it, and then I was reading today, and I thought, yes, of course, that was a tricky start. And his family have remained.
Staff as well, yeah.
All his staff, yeah. His family have remained in England. His son is signed for Watford. which was interesting. But I also saw he's not speaking French in the media. He speaks in Spanish or he speaks in English, a bit like when he was at Southampton. He declined to speak in English, so he's holding off on the French just yet. I presume this is just some kind of tactic. It allows him kind of mumble through explanations when he wants.
No, because he's flanked by Miguel D'Agostino, who speaks very, very good French indeed, and who is a very good translator, even though he's not. It's not his job. I think it's more a question that he wants to be on top of his communication, as we say in French, sa communication, and that he's afraid that if he speaks in French, which he can speak and quite well, by the way, but it's a little bit rusty, he would be misunderstood, and given the degree of a focus that is directed at PSG and on him in particular, you can understand why he wants to be very, very careful and very cautious. And I'm sure that he will have been encouraged by the people at the club to be careful precisely. But there's the other problem is that he wanted to have refresher courses in French, and that because of the situation, because of the COVID situation, he hasn't been able to do so. So he's rustier than he thought he would have been at this stage of his stay in Paris. It's only a question of time. But it certainly is. I think people are looking at it and they know what happened when he was in England. You say Southampton, but I seem to remember the first press conferences I went to when he was at Tottenham, he was still speaking in Spanish. Right. So it took him quite a long time to get to that level. Yeah. But don't forget, of course, he played for PSG. He has experience of speaking French. French should be an easier language for him than English, by the way, being a Latino-Romance language. So, but it has been noticed, but it's not really something that is held against him very much at the moment.
Okay. I was reading, Guillaume Balaguer was writing on the BBC website, and he was saying it's his understanding that Pochettino has, quote, put a metaphorical arm around the shoulder of those players who struggled with the distance Tuchel liked to keep with players. Now, we're seeing Tuchel at first hand at Chelsea, and I can imagine him keeping players at a distance, and it's a strict enough regime in many ways. So is Pochettino more of an arm around the shoulder type? Is that what you're hearing?
Yes, that's what I'm hearing at the moment. Even though I would perhaps beg to differ in differentiating the managers in such stark terms. Tuchel can also be a manager who he has a different type of relationship. Pochettino is very much more of a, arm around the shoulder, very simpatico, very human in his relationship. Perhaps not quite as cutting as Tuchel can be at times, but he's also a very strict disciplinarian. I think one of the things that people have appreciated in Paris is the way that he's been able to approach the squad with a completely clean slate kind of approach. So he hasn't let any preconceptions, rule his decisions or taint his judgment of, and he's given some chances to players like Moise Kean, was unfortunately not available tonight because he's actually he tested positive for COVID last week. But he's given chances to players that perhaps were not expecting it. He's been, he's been perhaps more open-minded than some people feared. And I guess following the extreme tension of the last few weeks and months of Tuchel's tenure, I guess that having somebody like Mauricio Pochettino, who is such a warm, humane kind of man, made a big difference and certainly lightened up the atmosphere quite a bit in the dressing room. It's not, but I think we're making a little bit too much perhaps of the differences between the characters of the two coaches, because what people say about Tuchel at Chelsea, what I'm hearing about Tuchel at Chelsea is that actually people have been surprised that he was actually quite approachable and actually enjoyed the relationship he had with his players, and was very much was not quite the distant, hands-off, incredibly technical, incredibly tactical kind of manager that perhaps he's been presented like.
Okay. I mean, ultimately Tuchel's problem, amongst other issues, I'm sure, was that discipline was difficult to impose. Yeah. Not least when it came to Neymar, because And Neymar had a direct line to the owner of the club, and the owner of the club liked being friends with Neymar, and Neymar liked having birthday parties, which went on for 48 hours. And where does that leave you?
Longer than that.
Or longer than yes. His 6 months, his half birthdays went on for 48 hours. Where does that leave you if you're Tuchel? It leaves you hamstrung. So I'm wondering how Pochettino navigates that dynamic, or maybe that hasn't arisen yet.
I don't think it has arisen yet, and one of the reasons why it hasn't arisen yet is because Neymar is injured, and so this is a problem, if that is a problem that you will have to address later. I think as well he arrived perhaps with a different reputation, as in when Tuchel came in, Tuchel was, how can I put that? Perhaps it was a kind of graft that people were not expecting, and it seemed a little bit against nature, if you see what I mean. Whereas Pochettino, completely different context. Pochettino is somebody who was PSG. He was a player, and he was not just a player. He was a player. I remember Luis Fernandez saying when he was his manager, if I had 11 players like Mauricio Pochettino, I would win everything. That's the kind of reputation and aura he had at the club and with the supporters. And that matters. Tuchel is nothing of the kind. Tuchel arrived with a reputation of somebody who was quite difficult, whose relationship with his previous clubs had ended quite bitterly, and who was very much kind of a new wave of technicians, managers, coaches, whichever way you wanted to. Whereas Pochettino is the Bielsa disciple and all these sort of things, but he's also a kind of more traditional kind of manager, should I say that? And perhaps he was, when he came to PSG as well, Pochettino had been courted by PSG for quite a while. It was the combination of a process which took quite a while. Tuchel was different. Tuchel arrived at a different phase of the club's development, at a different crisis state, because it's always a crisis state at PSG, and perhaps because of that, this tainted the perception that we had of his tenure and the way he was perceived by the players and the way he related to Neymar and so forth. Because honestly, what I've heard about Tuchel from people who are very close to the club, much closer than I am, who follow it day to day, is that an awful lot has been made about the relationship that he had with some of his star players, and has been blown out of all proportion. Okay. And that actually, up until quite late in his reign at Paris Saint-Germain, things were going on well. In particular, Neymar had completely taken on the mantle of being a leader in the dressing room. He was talking to the young players a lot. He was trying to help them. And I totally believe that. The image of Neymar being just this party animal who just, goes to Rio as soon, or Sao Paulo, anytime he can do it, and that's about it. That's his commitment to football, is wrong. That's totally wrong. If you have watched Paris Saint-Germain with Neymar, you will see that he's always been so very, very committed to the cause. Perhaps he hasn't had the kind of hygiene in his, as we say in French, or lifestyle, to be more correct, that he should have had. But I think we've overblown that a little bit.
Okay. And in fairness to him, he was very, very good in the knockout stages last season.
Yeah.
So, look, ultimately approaches will change and the club will be at a different stage to where it was a year ago and certainly 3 or 4 years ago. When it all boils down to it, Philippe, you're watching PSG more regularly than all of us, I suspect. Is there any great difference in terms of what PSG are doing on the field now under Pochettino? Early days, I know, but what they're doing now under Pochettino and what they were doing towards the end of last year under Tuchel?
Yeah, I think the balance is much, much better. It's a bit of a funny team because, you've got players of very, I would say, different levels who coexist, who are playing together in this team. And some of them are like superstars and super players. Some of them are good international players. Some of them are okay, good, but not fantastic. But there is a balance now. And the big difference that Pochettino has made is that is the way he's looked at his midfield and the way he's restructured it. And now you've got basically Leandro Paredes, who is there all the time and who is a complete revelation when you think of where his career was going when he went to Russia. And you've got Gana Gueye. Those two guys are absolutely central. They're the double pivot, with Paredes being more of a deep lying midfielder. which has enabled Marco Verratti, to go up one level, and I mean in terms of the space. He's gone up, and he's now playing as a number 10, and he's reveling in that. And you're seeing the proper Verratti. So it has been it's not a small change. It's actually a very big change,
right,
in tactical terms. And this has paid dividends. And of course, it means that you've got now this place is number 10 is taken by Verratti, which means it's going to be a bit of a problem when Neymar comes back, because you're going to have to find room for everybody else. Draxler is very good at the moment. Icardi has been great. Kylian Mbappe is simply unstoppable. So you've got Neymar, you've got Di Maria, you can carry on, Sarabia. It's going to be interesting to see. But at the moment, yes, he's done that. He's given the team a balance it didn't have before with Tuchel. He's found within the squad the means to do that.
Okay, very interesting. Well, listen, we're suspecting there won't be a shock in that game. If we're going to see a shock, it'll probably be in Budapest. The Liverpool thing is just continuing to defy logic. I mean, collapse isn't even the word anymore. It's the most extraordinary, for want of a better word, collapse, capitulation I can remember seeing in football.
I was talking today with my foreign desk editor at France Football, and we were trying to find examples, not just in England, but in world football, of a team that, after becoming, the best team in its era, which it has been for the last 2.5 years, champion of England, champion of Europe, champion of the world, final, as well as a Europa League final and another Champions League final. And thinking, are there any other examples of a team that reaches such incredible summits and then collapses this way? And we couldn't. I genuinely, we couldn't. In any case, even teams that had most of their star players taken away from them because they had just won, a Champions League, and they were like an Ajax, for example, or a Porto, and they didn't have the means to keep them. There was a dip, or sometimes a very severe dip, turbulences, but never this kind of collapse. Sometimes you can think like it can happen. If you think of what happened to Antonio Conte's Chelsea after they won the title, perhaps you would think, that was pretty bad. But it was nothing compared to what we're seeing now. And even it has nothing to do with what happened with Borussia Dortmund in 2015, which is an example which has been taken on by many people. But remember that at one point, I think they were just above the relegation zone. But they kicked on from Christmas onwards, and they finished 7th that season. So they were able to react. You do get the feeling with that Liverpool team that the reaction is you won't get it. It's very sad.
Philippe, always great to have you on. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Philippe Auclair with us ahead of the Champions League games this evening. Simon Hughes from The Athletic was on OTBAM with Ger and Owen this morning. OTBAM, as I'm sure you know, is our daily breakfast show here on Off the Ball, 7:30 every morning. All our social channels, the OTB Sports app, the Go Loud app, any number of ways of getting it, podcast as well. We'll give you a sense of what Simon Hughes, who covers Merseyside football and not least Liverpool, had to say about the situation in just a second.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. Champions League nights on Off the Ball. Bigger than Zlatan's Eco. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Le Clushan there, Clore Pat Kenny, Mudgeon Amorach, Transport Minister Eamon Ryan on travel and quarantine. Professor Luke O'Neill on the latest coronavirus science. What would happen if Ennis was designated as a city, not a town?
They're not looking at that there could be the gangs, or there could be the drug scene, or could be the nightclubs, they're keeping everyone awake at night.
A cookbook for fussy eaters, and of course, the breaking news.
The Pat Kenny Show.
With Mater Private Network.
Mudgeon Amorach ar an Naya Club.
On News Talk.
Still running 1-month marathons. Still pledging every penny. Still beating batter and raising dough. Still shaving beards, dyeing heads and waxing legs. Still challenging family and friends. Still keeping up keepy-ups. Still giving everything we can. Cancer is still here, but so are we, every step of the way. To get support or to donate, visit the Irish Cancer Society at cancer.ie.
A beautiful bouquet of flowers, It can say more than words ever could. To celebrate, congratulate, or just let someone know you're thinking of them. At flowers.ie, we know every bouquet is special. So every order we receive is hand-picked, arranged with care, and delivered with love across Ireland. We even send a video before it's delivered, so you know it's just right. Say it with flowers at www.flowers.ie. Rated 5 stars on Trustpilot.
Bank of Ireland is looking out for the financial well-being of businesses, helping to protect them from fraudsters. So be careful with any email you get from a supplier asking to change their bank account details. Double check it's legit. Pick up the phone and give them a call. And make sure it's a phone number you already have. It could be one of the most important calls you'll make. Oh, speaking of which, I better ring you know who. Search Bank of Ireland Security, and together we won't let the fraudsters win.
Begin. Bank of Ireland is regulated by the Central Bank